Astroworld documentary, concert crush, sparks fight in lawsuit. This was very, very interesting because at first I was like, just the documentary. There was a documentary made like almost something we covered on the channel. Like somebody had like a documentary done like a week after the incident, which is just really uncomfortable. Like, how the heck did you pull that together that fast?
I don't know. I covered this pretty seriously for the Timcast site, especially when it was happening. There's a chance that they were making a documentary about this concert anyways, and then we're like, we now know how to edit it.
But why would you make a documentary about Astroworld in the first place? Is it that interesting?
Well, they make concert documentaries are fairly common.
Yeah, I feel like concert documentaries are fairly common. It's kind of interesting because it was something Travis Scott started on his own, like, because he feels very dedicated to the city of Houston. I also would be interested if they were following Travis Scott. So he had several other allegations. Like, he has been indicted for, like, causing, I can't remember what the charge is, but, like, mass disruption for, like, encouraging fans at concerts in different states to rush to the stage. He's facing multiple lawsuits, including one in New York, Manhattan court, where a man was thrown from a third-story balcony because the crowd was so rowdy and there was so little security.
And like the lawsuits on him now, like, total over $1 billion.
Yeah, it's insane.
In the name of, like, reviving punk rock culture or something, but in rap.
I mean, kind of.
I think that is kind of what he's
part
trying
of his
to do.
brand.
I don't know. I
it's
think
so
that's giving him
that it's not.
I think that's giving him too much credit. Like, I think the punk movement is really interesting, but I don't think that's what this is. I think this is like a lack of regard for, like, your responsibility as a creator and performer.
He might just, like, he starts his concert and maybe he doesn't feel like he wants to do it, but when he gets performing, you can't turn that off. And it's part of who he is.
There's no evidence to say that he, like, actually, I mean, I haven't seen it yet. I'm really waiting for the court proceedings to go on. Like, that he carefully mapped out how much security was needed to, like,
but the security left, right?
This is the third year that show's gone on. There have been issues every single year at Astroworld, including, like, he has a history of this.
Like, people coming onto the stage and, like, telling him what was happening and him ignoring it.
It was
Is that
crazy.
True?
Yeah. So there was, like, I don't know about onto the stage, but, like, people would, you know, at concerts, you, like, lift people up onto your shoulders. Like, they would, there was, like, footage on, especially it circulated Twitter in the days afterwards of the whole crowd chanting "Stop the show" and him going on. And he was like, I was in the zone, I was in the moment, which, like, you want to believe, except, like, things happened afterwards. Like, there was a video of a girl, they'll have these big towers where security will sit and, like, kind of watch what's going on radio, saying, like, there's a fight breaking out or whatever. And a girl climbed up that. There's been a couple of them, but I remember this one. This girl climbed up and was like, there are people being trampled down there. You have to call the ambulance. You have to. And they're like, get down, like, pushing her back into the crowd. There's also, like, Kylie Jenner was there. Sorry, I happen to have a lot of information about this, so I have to use it right now. There's, like, video. So Kylie Jenner, like, posted a video from the stage, like, being like, look, we're at his concert. And there's an ambulance trying to get through the crowd. And then she took it down afterwards because, like, they could see what was happening, and they
I would understand if Travis Scott didn't know what was happening if he were wearing one of those earpieces.
They have
that,
to wear
like,
the
he
earpiece.
can only hear
there was
himself.
smoke. Like, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but because he has an established history,
the lights are facing
safety
him.
Regulations, like, I just feel like there is a pattern of, like, negligence here, and at a certain point, like, yeah, we can forgive and we can assume that, like, some things were an accident, but, like, you also have to take responsibility for being willfully.
I bet he thinks that just adds some, like, badass, chaotic, artistic energy to it or something.
And we've covered,
stupid like that.
He has started he's done a multitude of, like, trying to rebuild his brand through charity work since then, or at least beyond the stuff that he was already doing.
And some of it has come up in the lawsuit.
Yes, but what I found interesting about this article was it says Astroworld documentary concert crush sparks fight and lawsuit. Live Nation is raising red flags about the movie, which is partly produced by lawyers repping the victims. So that feels to me like a slight conflict of interest in a way. That the people whose financial compensation is dependent on how this goes, and this could absolutely sway public opinion.
I also think there's a media gag in place, so that sort of might be in violation of something that's already.
I'm not saying legally. I don't know if there is. I'm saying it feels that way to me.
I feel like it would be skewed in whoever, like, the favor of whoever has the most money, which would be Travis Scott, right? So maybe this is just balancing the scales.
I don't know if he can even make a documentary that makes him look like the good guy in this case.
So he's done a couple of things, like he's done some interviews, and he also sent out a big email blast offering, like, mental health support to people who were at the concert, and that came up in court because they were like, there's a media gag, and he's contacting the victims, offering them like
Yeah.
charitable services.
Yep.
And like all of the lawyers, because there's like thousands of people involved in this lawsuit, and the lawyers, so there's like a fair amount of lawyers at this point, like they all filed out past the press without talking, because again, there's a media gag in place. So in some ways, this might come up to bite them if they are actually involved in it, because they might be violating the media gag.
So it says an upcoming documentary over the tragedy at Astroworld has become the latest flashpoint in the massive lawsuit over the deadly festival, with Live Nation warning a judge that it might taint the jury pool. With Concert Crush set to release in Texas theaters this week, attorneys for Live Nation told the judge handling the case on Friday that it was important she be aware of the movie. In particular, they flagged the fact that it was produced by Ricardo Ramos, an attorney who represents victims in the case. The involvement of plaintiffs' lawyers in the film and the publicity the filmmakers and producers are trying to generate for it raises significant issues about efforts to taint the jury pool, wrote Neil Mann, Live Nation's top lawyer on the case. Live Nation, Travis Scott, and others facing billions in potential liability over the crowd crush incident during the rapper's November 5th performance in the Houston Festival, which left 10 dead and hundreds more injured. The case accuses Astroworld's organizers of being legally negligent in how they planned and conducted the event. Lawsuits filed by thousands of victims have been consolidated into a single large case, which remains at the earliest stages. Early flashpoints have centered around whether Scott violated the gag order, as Anna Claire mentioned, imposed on the case.
I'm so on the ball.
She is, and which attorneys should be given leadership roles for the victims. A trial date is not set. Now, this is another thing that I found interesting, because it says Concert Crush is directed by Charlie Min, who labeled himself as, quote, a victim-driven documentary filmmaker, and has previously made films about the 2017 Las Vegas massacre and other mass tragedies. Beyond involvement of Ramos, the film also features interviews with Tony Busby and Brett Kuhn, two prominent Texas attorneys who have repped hundreds of the Astroworld victims in the case. In response to filings on Monday, multiple victims' attorneys fired back at Live Nation's complaint. Robert C. Hilliard, who did not participate in the movie but was mentioned as a potential interviewee, blasted Live Nation's lawyers for filing a transparent, tattletale letter with a sky is falling urgent tone. Hilliard suggested the attorneys were perhaps hoping to distract the court from their own clients' criminally negligent conduct in the deaths and injuries of so many. I really thought the idea of maybe this is just me. I mean, I understand that documentaries, it's not. I guess it's not out of the question, but I feel like it's weird to like label yourself as like a tragedy, like
as victim driven.
I go back and forth on this. Go ahead.
Well, it seems similar to like disaster tourists who go to on site of natural disasters or massacres, and it's framed as some kind of humanitarian effort, but in reality they're kind of cashing out on the attention it gets.
Yeah, I think the thing is, we might think of a documentarian in the same way we think of like journalism, and there's a certain standard for like fact-based reporting.
Yeah.
But I actually think you could think of documentarians as more of an op-ed piece. Like if you had a person who was writing a weekly column that's just their opinion.
Yeah.
Like a documentarian, as far as I know, is actually under no like ethical obligation to not frame their perspective. In fact, framing the perspective of the documentary also gives it the narrative structure it needs to be interesting.
It says, while Min's films, Crush included, largely focused on survivors of these shootings, the director has been accused of sensationalizing tragedy and exploiting trauma for profit. So that's where I'm sure for a lot of it is like people take issue with the fact that this is his livelihood, right? So this is just some stuff. These are some tweets that were pulled together about it. It says, a Facebook post from Charlie Min about fueling his anger. His films represent innocent people, but he's willing to sell another movie. If only you saw the creepy messages he was sending others. You're exploiting trauma, Charlie. You're creepy and gross. It says, and it just goes on. Last year, El Paso-based photographer Jorge Salgado took to Twitter with screenshots of derogatory messages from Min. The post quickly sparked discussion of Min's ethics, as well as allegations that the filmmaker potentially harassed interview subjects. So he needs his story, just like I guess like you'd say, like a dogged reporter who wants to continually get to the bottom of something. But if doing that involves a lot of discussions with people who have been through something extremely traumatic, that's not the same as harassing the CEO of BP for a comment about their latest oil spill. This is very, very different. It needs to be treated with the nuance due to something like that. So it says, students at the University of El Paso, Texas, where Min as guest lectured, were particularly vocal. Some took to Twitter to question the school giving him the platform. To be completely honest, I disagree with the idea of not giving him his platform. I'm more in the camp of saying that in the, I guess we talked about the marketplace of ideas recently, but that you just simply, if you don't agree, you either tell them you don't agree and you have the discussion, or you ignore it. But I don't agree with taking away the platform from someone. But this is a tweet that came through. It said, he came and spoke at one of my classes right after the shooting. A girl in the class had a family member in the hospital who had been shot, and she told him this, and he kept harassing her for an interview. So, it's
a sensitive situation when it involves minors like that. I don't really know.
Well, this is college. This was the University of El Paso, so it would have been a college student.
Okay.
Yeah. It says, you are really allowing this kind of person to come on campus and speak during classes. Charlie Min is a danger to any student. Okay, I think that's becoming hyperbolic. I think annoyance, definitely disrespectful, possibly, but not. I don't see that as being annoyance. Min's alleged behavior calls the integrity of Concert Crush into question. The film could potentially give the families of the Astroworld victims a much-needed platform. It could also sensationalize the tragedy. The media.
Maybe it can accomplish both.
It could, this is like I said, this is a very nuanced type of thing to be involved with. Like, realistically, if you're going to make documentaries for a living, you're going to have to cover subject matter that is going to be controversial, because that's where the most interesting type of there's special interest pieces. Like, I love documentaries on how stuff about how stuff is made, but that's not how you're going to make a living if you're making 1-2 films a year. Or a film a year, whatever somebody like this is doing.
And you can't aim to just report the facts. You have to add your spin on it.
Exactly.
Because people can find the facts by reading.
Exactly. So I just thought this was a very interesting thing in a very, very complex case that we've covered several. We talked about the Oscars keep coming up, and this is you're never realistically, this is going to go on for years. I'm sure the trial won't be anytime soon. But do you guys have any objection to him making a movie about such an incident?
No, and I'm gonna watch it.
You gonna watch it?
This is interesting.
Yep.
I'm not on principle against him making a movie about
Absolutely
it.
not,
And
yeah.
in fact, it's probably something that deserves to have a movie made about it.
Yep.
Obviously his treatment of those involved, that might speak to his character and whether I would, want to support his work in the future. Really what concerns me, and again, mostly because I think this deserves to go to trial, if I give you my honest opinion, is that that one lawyer is on there as a producer. It probably would have been better if he disclosed this to the court.
Yeah.
I understand the tattletale comment coming from the other lawyers, but he either should have recused himself from the case, excused himself from the movie, or disclosed it to the judge. I think that's sort of a bad professional judgment. That's more where my concern lies.
Yep. So
I don't know if this is distasteful, but I think it would be really interesting if the documentary touched on, well, I don't think it's going to, but it would be interesting if it touched on the theories that the festival turned out this way as some kind of ritualistic violence or sacrifice on the crowd.
There's a lot of people who talked about the symbolism in
and consumer culture and spiritual degradation, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, when this first started, I don't know how much you guys followed it, but there was a security guard who it seemed like had gotten injected with something. And so when the news literally started to break about this, it was people hospitalized, 4 people hospitalized, 5 people hospitalized, 20 people hospitalized, 100 people injured, death. And it just kept growing. And they had never clarified what happened to that security guard. As far as I know, it's fine. But there was a moment where it seemed like it might be kind of like a mass poisoning or a mass overdose of someone walking through with needles and injecting people.
And that did happen.
That happened. It seemed to have happened to the security guard, but it did not appear to have happened to anyone else. So
there wasn't
to be
drugs?
clear, there's no reason to suggest there are drugs at that concert. There were people.
No, I'm saying there wasn't the multiple people getting
as far as I know, and to the best of my knowledge, I really want to be clear about this. All of the deaths involved have to do with asphyxiation due to the crush.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does not have anything there were people there who were on drugs and who were seeking medical attention, but it does not have anything to do with what this would be subject to. Because there was a fear that this is going to start being a crazy trend of people just walking around and poisoning people at big events.
One of the first memes that I saw before all the details came out was somebody's like, it was like an article headline that says like somebody going around like injecting people with drugs at Astroworld. And so it's like, why can't I ever end up going to the cool concerts? I think that's what they were talking about. Like, how is this a thing? Like the
well,
joke
and it
of
was like the chaos of like, we've been in COVID for so long, we're finally starting to get large scale events again. And then it's like,
People don't know how to act.
people don't act. So it's like, I'll just stab you with some drugs. Like, that's crazy.
There was the old joke about like Dare would tell you like, be careful, people are going to just offer you drugs, and that's like,
They're not
I'm
going
in
to
my
offer it
mind,
to you. They're going to stab you with them.
like nobody has ever just offered me drugs. That's not,
That's not really, I don't think that you understand.
that's not a thing. That's like people will offer to sell them to you maybe, but nobody's gonna like come up and give you drugs.
Free ones.
It's that was a Chris Rock bit too where he talks about it. He's like I'm 30 years old. Ain't nobody ever sold me drugs. I bought drugs. Drugs sell themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's worth like having a better understanding of what's going on with the Astroworld stuff. And, you know, Travis Scott, like, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but like, he has a weird history. I thought the way like he handled his first interview, he did an interview that went to YouTube with like someone you would know if I could remember their name. And it was like very staged. They're in like an undisclosed location where everything's like beige and modern, and like he was in this weird predicament where he couldn't apologize for what happened because can be considered admitting guilt,
Right.
but also like,
Yeah.
you know,
Let the corporate
I
speak
don't know
begin.
that it was like anyone really wanted to hear from you right now, because like, yeah, I think I can't remember the timeline exactly, but it was either right after or just before the youngest victim, who was like 8 years old,
Yeah.
Wow.
died. Like, he had been hospitalized and had been on a ventilator as far as I know. And
I'm shocked
It's
that
just, like,
someone
crazy.
that age would even be at the event.
he might have been 11.
No, he was younger. He was under 10.
He was between. I think he was 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had the same reaction, which was like, well, what is
Who is
what do you mean?
taking their child / younger brother?
And that's the thing too. Like, that's why it's important to acknowledge that, to me at least, that there was a history. It wasn't like this is a one-time thing. Previous Astroworlds had incidents with security issues and other concerts. He's literally been charges have been brought against him for recklessly endangering the crowd.
Yep.
Like, it is an interesting way to then be like, oh, but I'm partnering with
Mental health service company.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know
Yeah.
that that's enough.
Yep. I don't know. We will see. This is definitely going to be coming up more. There will be more news to this coming up very soon, I am sure. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.
Bye.